Hey guys, welcome on into, another episode of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I want to thank you guys for joining me again tonight here on this Tuesday night, or Wednesday night actually. Wow, it's halfway through the week already. But we've got a good show for you today. We are going to have the pre-draft NFL power rankings. I'm going to go ahead and list 15 teams, top 15 across the board, leading into this coming NFL draft in a couple of weeks. Also, we're going to talk some season previews. We're going to talk about the team that does have the number one overall pick, the Tennessee Titans. Going to preview their best and worst case scenarios, as well as the Houston Texans. We're going to do the same for them. But make sure you stick around for later in the show, and I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on upcoming seasons for both BYU and for Iowa State. But before we get into the show, before we start, I would like to ask that you guys like and follow the show. If you have a question or a comment during the show, we do want to hear it. So anything that you guys want to go ahead and contribute to the show. Sorry, I'm having some camera difficulties here for some reason. But either way, if you have a question or a comment that you want to leave for the show, definitely do that, whether it's a quick comment or a thoughtful question or an opinion that you just have to share. Don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure that your message gets across the board and stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the super chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We do rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you love, and we appreciate every single bit of that support. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking, hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show interactive and exciting. And if you prefer, you can go to gsmcsports.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or a question there as well. Couldn't do what we do without you guys and all of your support, so we're thankful to have you guys as part of our community. Once again, that link to that website is gsmcsports.net if you want to tip, donate, or just leave a question or a comment there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the first segment of our show here. And this is just pre-draft power rankings. I've listed a few teams here that I wanted to cover. There's 15 teams, so we'll go relatively quickly for it. But we're going to start at number 15. Number 15, I have the Arizona Cardinals coming in at 15. So I like what they've done so far this offseason. They've shored up some players on the defensive line, adding Calais Campbell again after he had a brief stint in Miami last year. So also they've added a couple of other guys, Josh Sweat from the Philadelphia Eagles. They've added him to that defensive line. And of course their offense is missing probably one big playmaker on the outside to pair along with Marvin Harrison Jr. And then they can really take off on that offense. Kyler Murray, I do believe, is still a pretty solid quarterback. But we haven't seen the full potential of him just yet. So maybe if he gets some additional weapons around Marvin Harrison Jr., then possibly they can make a little bit of noise. We'll see. But that's number 15. Coming in at number 14, I have the Chicago Bears. Now, I've been talking about the Bears a lot this offseason about how impressed I am with what they're doing so far on off, or not just on offense, but just the entire team in the offseason. Adding several guys on defense to shore up the defensive line. Grady Jarrett coming over from Atlanta. That was a big get for them. They've basically completely revamped their offensive line as well. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention, of course, the new coaching situation with the former Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson now being the head coach there in Chicago. I expect big things from the Bears this year. I think they will make the playoffs. That's why I have them at 14, 7 teams total in the playoffs. 7 teams each conference in the playoffs, so that's 14 teams. So they're one of those 14 teams that make it, I believe, this year, barring any kind of injuries or setbacks or anything like that, of course. But that's number 14. Number 13, I have another team that's kind of up and coming, and that's the Denver Broncos. They, of course, made the playoffs last year and were pretty much handled pretty easily by the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round, 31-7. But that was their first year in the playoffs under Sean Payton, and the first year in the playoffs under new quarterback Bo Nix, who was a rookie last year. So their defense was very, very good throughout the whole entire year. So I expect their defense to be much better with some added pieces like Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw from San Francisco. So to pair along with that already good defense, I expect the defense to be even better this year. And Bo Nix can grow into his second year and maybe take that big second year leap that you so often see from young quarterbacks. So we'll see. But I like the Broncos there at number 13. Number 12, I have a team that actually did not make the playoffs last year, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. I think they're kind of being written off because of how many injuries they had last year, and they did lose a few pieces on defense in the offseason, but this is still a very good team. They were injury riddled, to hell last year, so there were a ton of guys that were missing. Christian McCaffrey basically didn't play the entire year, so that's their best player on offense not available. And of course Brandon Ayuk, who just signed the big contract in last year's offseason, he tears his ACL and he was out for the entire year as well, not to mention a bunch of other injuries. Brock Purdy dealt with a couple things here and there. Nothing that really kept him out of any games, but he still dealt with some lingering issues here and there. So I still think the 49ers are a very good team. If they can stay healthy, I think they can make some noise in the NFC West for sure. But that's who I have number 12. Number 11, I have the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams are doing a good job keeping their window open with Matt Stafford. Obviously, the big get this offseason outside of being able to extend Matthew Stafford and keep him there was, of course, getting Devontae Adams. Now, with Cooper Kupp off to Seattle to join Sam Darnold and play there, they needed some additional help at the wide receiver position after Kupp left, so they went ahead and they signed Devontae Adams to a 2-year deal, and he is, of course, still a very good receiver, not necessarily in his prime in terms of age is concerned, but he is still a very quality receiver, so I think that's a good pairing. And Devontae Adams will have the best quarterback that he's had in a number of years, probably since his early days in Green Bay, when Aaron Rodgers was, of course, still in his prime. So I like the move for Devontae Adams, and I like the Rams overall. I have them at number 11. Number 10, I had to put the Minnesota Vikings on there. Had to put them somewhere on this list, and I think they have a good enough overall team to be in the top 10. They have a top 10 roster, in my opinion. There are questions around the quarterback position, of course, because J.J. McCarthy is essentially going to be a rookie this year, coming into his second season, as he was hurt all of last year. So there's questions there, but I think the Vikings have a good enough team all the way around him to where they can kind of overcome any kind of shortcomings that he might have going through his first NFL season as a starter. So I do like the Vikings at number 10. Number 9 is a team that I think had kind of a weird year last year, and they weren't nearly as bad as their record ended up showing, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, of course, making headlines this offseason by keeping the trio all together, signing Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both back-to-back on the same day. And, of course, they signed Joe Burrow a couple of years ago, so that keeps that trio together for the foreseeable future, and that is a very, very potent offense. So if they can just improve the defense a little bit, and I do think the defense will be improved, I think the Bengals will come out with a little bit more motivation this year to not start slowly. So I like the Bengals to be in the top 10. They have a top 10 offense, that is for sure. If their defense can just at least even get to like middle of the pack, then they could end up being a real problem once playoff time rolls around. So 9 is the Bengals. Number 8, I have the LA Chargers. Chargers, of course, making a number of additions to their roster, and, of course, a big subtraction to their roster is, of course, having Joey Bosa no longer there. They released him, and now he plays in Buffalo for the Bills, but they did re-sign Khalil Mack on that defense for the edge rusher there, the veteran edge rusher still. with the Chargers, signed him to a 1-year deal. They also brought in Najee Harris from Pittsburgh to shore up the running back room. Now that J.K. Dobbins is most likely not going to be re-signed. He is a free agent as it stands right now, has not been signed by anybody just yet. So they went ahead, they get Najee Harris, who is a durable back for them. He could be an every down back. He's had a lot of work already in Pittsburgh. He had a pretty heavy workload until Jaylen Warren came around, and they started kind of splitting carries a little bit when Warren got picked up by the Steelers as an undrafted free agent. So, so I like the Chargers, and I like Jim Harbaugh's second year under Jim Harbaugh, and, of course, Justin Herbert, one of the better young quarterbacks in the league. So the Chargers are definitely a talented team, but their issue is when you get into the playoffs, can they do anything? And that's been their issue for a long time. So I have the Chargers at 8. Number 7, I have the Washington Commanders. Now, the Commanders came out of nowhere last year, surprised everybody by not only making the playoffs, but getting all the way to the NFC Championship game, where they ultimately lost to Philadelphia, the eventual Super Bowl champions. So the Commanders, they have a lot to look forward to. They have this whole new regime, whole new ownership. They had a very successful first year post Dan Snyder last year, with Dan Quinn coming in and breathing some new life into that organization, as well as, of course, you got to give credit to Josh Harris, the new owner. But getting Jaden Daniels drafted as well was a big move, and he, proved to be definitely one of the best quarterbacks, probably the best quarterback in last year's draft class. But he won Rookie of the Year pretty much handily, and then gets to the NFC Championship game. And I think he's the type of talented guy that could absolutely be back there, and even possibly this year if they get everything, shored up on defense. Last year they struggled against the run, so they're going to need to improve that a little bit as well. So we'll see. But number 6, I have the Green Bay Packers. Have Jordan Love, of course, on that offense, and Matt LaFleur being the head coach, and of course they have Josh Jacobs at running back. But they did add some other guys as well, most notably Nate Hobbs, the corner out of Las Vegas, or from Las Vegas. They went ahead and signed him. He was a big free agent pickup for the Packers to secure that secondary. Of course, they still have Xavier McKinney in the secondary, who they picked up last offseason. So, it's really, really a good, solid team for the Packers this coming season. So I think just outside of the top 5, though, they're not quite there in terms of being a contender for a Super Bowl or anything. So now we're going to get into the Super Bowl contenders. So number 5, I have the Buffalo Bills. Bills always are in the conversation with Josh Allen as the quarterback. That makes no difference, what the year is. They tend to always be right there. Now, they just did add a big name on defense, of course, as we briefly mentioned before, but that was Joey Bosa, so that should shore up that defense and, make that, make their edge rushing a lot better than in previous years, of course, with Von Miller now going. So we'll see what the Bills do. The Bills always seem to get right there and then just get their hearts broken in the playoffs. So we'll see if that changes at any point, if not this year. So moving on, number 4, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. And I have the Chiefs down here at 4 because last year, though they did win 15 games and they got to the Super Bowl, so they definitely were good enough, they showed a lot of cracks throughout the course of the season. And I think they got pretty fortunate on some particular cases, not necessarily just, referees or anything, but just situationally they got fortunate in a lot of areas. But they are very well coached too, so you got to give them credit for winning these games, and they are a Super Bowl contender every single year because of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and to a lesser extent these days Travis Kelce as well. But their defense was very, very good last year, so one of the best in the league. So they should be right up there again this year. So I think the Chiefs will be the team, one of the teams to beat for sure in the AFC. But until somebody knocks them off of their AFC crown, they're going to be that team to beat. So look for them to, of course, get everybody's best this year, as what is normally the case, since, of course, they had been to 3 straight Super Bowls and won 2 out of the last 3 Super Bowls. So definitely very familiar with success. So moving on, a number 3 team that is not normally accustomed to success, but has been in recent years, and that's the Detroit Lions. I have them at 3. I just don't think that they're quite good enough to say overcome, say, like a team like the Eagles, but they're losing a lot on their team. Both their offensive and defensive coordinators both gone to new head coaching jobs, so that's going to be an adjustment. But they still have, for the most part, pretty solid offense. They've got the players still there. Aiden Hutchinson should be back from his injury this coming season, so their defense should be a little better. If their defense can stay healthy and their offense can stay healthy, then they should be right back there in the conversation at the end of the year. But number 2, I have the Baltimore Ravens. I think this has got to be it for the Ravens. They've got to do it this year. Otherwise, it's not going to get done, and we might see some changes, not necessarily head coaching changes, but we might see some changes in the coming offseason if the Ravens can't get over the hump. But they've got all the players there. They've got loads and loads of talent on offense and defense. There's no excuse at this point for them to not make the Super Bowl. They are one of the favorites, and they're one of the favorites for a reason. Lamar Jackson is an MVP-type player. Didn't win it this year, but you could make the argument that he should have won it, that he deserved it. But be that as it may, they also have Derrick Henry. That's another big weapon that they went out and got last offseason. They're improving their wide receiver room. They've got 2 very good tight ends. The offensive line needs a little bit of work with getting younger, with Ronnie Stanley at left tackle just being re-signed to a 3-year deal, but he has had his injury issues in the past, and his age, of course, is a concern as well. So Ravens, they've got to do it this year. Like I said, that's, they're going to be one of the favorites in the AFC. So they've got all the pieces there. They just need to put it together. And number 1, I have the Philadelphia Eagles, of course, for the obvious reasons, is that they are the reigning champs. So they deserve to be number 1 on any power ranking list heading into this coming season, because they are the champs. They're the team that everyone's trying to get to, the team that everyone's trying to catch up to and get that coveted Lombardi trophy at the end of the year. So not to mention the Eagles have a very good team as well. They lost some pieces on defense in the offseason, but they have more than enough depth to cover some of those holes, and I'm sure they're going to have a very good draft defensively, because they always do. And, of course, having Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, and then, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on that offense, it's a loaded offense, so they should be fine despite the, despite the departures on defense. They should be just fine. So those are my top 15 teams this coming season. This is pre-draft, of course. That could change. We'll probably do another power rankings list after the draft and just kind of include some of the guys that teams have picked up. See if there's any differences in opinion when that comes around. But when we come back, we're going to get into some more NFL football. We're going to do some previews of the team that has the number 1 overall pick in the Tennessee Titans. That is coming up right after this break, so just stick with us and we'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on their fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to get right into our next segment here. But before we do, just want to give you guys another reminder that if you have a question or a comment, definitely leave it in the super chat. And I apologize if my camera's not working here. Don't know what's going on with that, but this is the screen. So just go ahead and hit the super chat button if you have a question or a comment or anything like that. So let's go ahead and get into the next segment of our show here. We're going to be talking best worst case scenario, Tennessee Titans edition. Now, Tennessee Titans obviously have the number one overall pick in a couple of weeks in the NFL draft. That's going to be held in Green Bay, actually, for the first time in NFL history. So that'll be fun. But the Titans hold the number one overall pick, and it's really not much of a secret that they're most likely going to go Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami, with their number one overall pick. Not really too much of a surprise there. That seems to be the consensus around the league that that's what they're going to do. Last year they went 3-14, so definitely looking for a bounce back year. They had a combination of two different quarterbacks. Will Levis was most of the time, and then at times when either he struggled or was injured, Mason Rudolph came in and started a few games. They were pretty aggressive last offseason when you take a look at what they brought in talent-wise. They had Tyler Boyd, who was a coveted one of the top wide receivers that were available last offseason. They went ahead and they signed him. And then they signed L'Jarius Sneed from Kansas City, who was also one of the more highly sought-after defensive players in the free agency and, you know, just that whole frenzy, whether it's trades or whatever. So they were pretty aggressive. It didn't really work out. That didn't get them to where they wanted to go, mainly because of the issues with Will Levis and his development. He hasn't looked very good, you know, really at all. There's been sparks here and there where he's looked like he could, you know, be talented or could, you know, basically get up to maybe a serviceable type of starter, you know, but not anything that's going to wow you. He's got the arm talent, but he's got a lot of other issues that he needs to work on in his game. Overall for the Titans, they finished 27th in points per game last year with just 18.3, so near the bottom of the league. They're 28th in total offense and passing yards as well. And surprisingly, though, they were top 10 in time of possession at 8th place. So once again, like we were saying, Levis started 12 games, 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in those 12 games. Hasn't looked like the franchise quarterback that they really, you know, wanted him to, which is part of the reason why they are looking on the outside, trying to bring in another guy in the NFL draft. In this case, it is Cam Ward, of course. So Cam Ward, you would think, is most likely going to immediately compete with Will Levis for the starting quarterback job, assuming he gets drafted at Tennessee, which I can't imagine he won't. It would surprise me if he doesn't get drafted by the Titans, or if the Titans traded out of that pick and somebody else got him. That would surprise me, but it's going to be Cam Ward. So it's going to be Cam Ward against Will Levis in this training camp and preseason, and I do believe that Cam Ward will ultimately win that battle, and I don't really see any kind of benefit to starting Will Levis at this point. You know, you've seen him enough. He's been on the roster for a couple of years now, and he hasn't shown an ability to be a franchise quarterback as of yet. So why not give the younger guy a chance that you're going to spend the first round draft pick or first overall pick on? So definitely he's probably going to be the starter, I would imagine. Otherwise it's a massive failure. And that's, probably what I would say is the worst case scenario for the Titans, is that they draft Cam Ward and he is not the starter at any point this coming season, because if that is the case, then that means his development is not where it needs to be, and he is not where he needs to be talent-wise, and they would rather start Will Levis over him. That would be a nightmare if you're the Titans, of course. And, of course, you could say that the argument that's always made when you bring up rookie quarterbacks that struggle is, Peyton Manning had a really bad year in his rookie season when they only won like 2 games or something like that, and he threw a boatload of interceptions. But look how his career turned out. He was, considered one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and a 2-time Super Bowl champion. So 1 year doesn't necessarily make an entire quarterback's career. So even if Cam Ward were to come in and struggle, which is very possible because the Titans don't necessarily have a ton of talent around Cam Ward, so it's highly possible that he struggles. And that is the risk that you always take when you bring in a young quarterback in the first round when you're picking really high, because those teams that are picking really high typically are not the most talented teams in the world. So, you got to kind of take what you can get, if you're a young quarterback coming in. So maybe Cam Ward thrives as soon as he gets to Tennessee. Maybe it's just the right fit. But, we're not going to know that until, they start putting the pads on and start playing the games. So other needs that the Titans have, I could see them possibly going receiver at some point. They didn't really do anything free agency-wise at wide receiver, but maybe in the draft they go and get somebody, maybe in the second round or something like that. Edge rusher is another potential, area of need. Maybe try and draft a guy that's going to be able to pair with Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat, of course. Depending on what happens at quarterback, I could see them maybe getting 5 wins. If Cam Ward comes in and he plays lights out, has like a CJ Stroud type of rookie season, then who knows what the Titans could do. It's a very weak division that they play in. So if they can squeeze out a couple of games here and there, who knows? Maybe they can compete for a wild card round, which of course in the AFC South means you're also a division winner, because typically there's only one team that comes out of the AFC South. And most recently, it's been the Texans, because they just did draft C.J. Stroud a couple of years ago. So obviously, they have been the better team in that division for the most part. But really by default, because that division is just littered with teams that pick high in the draft every year. The Jags are in the top 5 again this year. The Titans are the number 1 overall pick. And then of course the Colts, they're up there too. They're kind of more middle of the pack than anybody in that division. But the Texans have been considered contenders before. After CJ Stroud's rookie season, they were coming into this past season with, the highest expectations that they could potentially contend with the likes of Kansas City in the AFC. Didn't end up working out, although they did give the Chiefs, everything that they could handle, when they did play them. So maybe they're right there, but they kind of had a sort of a down year by their standards. But we're going to talk about the Texans. I don't want to get too much into the Texans because we're going to talk about them in the next segment. But the Titans, that number 1 overall pick, they put themselves in at least good position to get the best available player. Cam Ward is going to be the guy. Brian Callahan is the head coach there. You would think that this needs to work out. Otherwise, he's going to be a coach that's probably going to be on the hot seat if he doesn't get fired at all, because the GM was not the same GM that was there when Brian Callahan got hired. It's a new GM there, so it's not like it's not like Callahan is his guy. So if they struggle, then it wouldn't surprise me at all if that GM wants to bring in his own guy and maybe guide that team and help Cam Ward develop into a really good quarterback. So we'll see, but the Titans have a lot of work to do. That it's not just quarterback that they need. There's a lot of issues on that team, and until Cam Ward can be good, they've got to shore up a lot of those holes. Offensive line needs to stop being a revolving door on the right side, which it has been. They've given up a league-high 29 sacks last year, which was the most among right tackles at that position. Just that group alone gave up 29 sacks. So the need there, the need is right there for a right tackle. So that could be something they address in the draft as well. But it's going to be Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick. So Titans' best case scenario is Cam Ward works out and ends up having a CJ Stroud type year, and then the Titans are better than what most people think that they are. And winning 9 games could possibly win you this division. So that is an attainable goal if they were to get to that. I don't think they will, but that would be kind of the target if you're in the AFC South. You can compete for a division title if you get to 9 wins, in my opinion. So that is the Titans. When we come back, we're going to talk about the team that won this division, and that is the Houston Texans. So stick with us. We're going to be right back right after this break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to get right into our next segment here. We're going to do best worst case scenario, Texans edition, and we talked about the Titans in the last segment. Going over to the Texans, of course, they won the AFC South last year, 10-7 overall record. CJ Stroud didn't look like that same dynamic player that we saw in his rookie season. He didn't have a horrible season or anything like that, but 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. It's kind of a little bit of a regression. He's still a talented quarterback, still could end up having a great career, but last year I think a lot of people would agree they weren't necessarily the best team offensively. Now, you could point to injuries as a good reason why they, were in and out of, different starters in the wide receiver room. Stephon Diggs was brought over as a free agent. He, of course, is no longer with the Texans. He's moved on to the Patriots. But Stephon Diggs was there last year. Didn't play a ton of games because he got hurt. And, of course, Tank Dell getting that ACL injury right at the end of the year definitely is not good for the Texans, and that hurts their wide receiver room because now they just essentially just have Nico Collins there, who is a very good, of course, wide receiver, but he also has had injury issues before too. So, the Texans have some questions there, and they're going to need to try and answer those questions at some point, whether that be in the draft or if they pick up somebody through free agency that still happens to be out there. I mean, it's slim pickings at that position, regardless, but especially now that we're so late into the process and we're getting close to the NFL draft. But overall for the offense, Joe Mixon, of course, we talked about CJ Stroud, but Joe Mixon, he was solid for the offense last year, had over 1,000 yards rushing and 12 total touchdowns, led the team in both categories. And the team itself was 19th in points per game with 21.9 and 22nd in total yards per game with just under 320 yards per game. Defense was solid overall, though, of course, having Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. as your two pass rushers. Obviously, your defense is going to be pretty solid, and solid they were. They were fourth in the league in sacks. They had 49 sacks total, and Danielle Hunter led the team with 12 sacks, and Anderson was close at second at 11 sacks on the season. So their defense was very good, overall. So, and they've, of course, secured some guys on the back end as well, in the secondary in particular. So, that's going to be a talented team defensively, but really it's the offensive line that needs some help. I could see them maybe going Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Booker possibly in the first round if they want to shore up the offensive line. They got rid of Laramie Tunsil, the previous left tackle. They traded him to the Commanders, which is still kind of a head-scratching decision, but he's gone now, so regardless of how you feel about it, he is gone, and they need to find a way to replace him in a timely manner too, and hopefully it won't be too much of a drop-off because their offense did kind of have a drop-off last year, so they don't need any more issues that could be setbacks for them. But also defensive tackle needs to be addressed in the draft. You could probably get somebody in the later rounds. It's a pretty deep class, as we have mentioned many times before on previous shows during this whole process of the draft. So wouldn't surprise me if they go after somebody in that regard as well. So they could go possibly running back in day 2 or day 3 just for depth behind Joe Mixon. Dameon Pierce is a solid running back, but he's probably not going to fit that scheme, and it's a deep draft class, so they could go running back later rounds, and they don't need to, spend those higher round picks on running backs. They could go maybe round 3. You could probably get away with getting a possible even starting caliber running back in that, at that point. It's just going to depend on how the rest of the draft shakes out, of course, but the Texans, like I said, they have this. It's weird because a couple of years ago, people weren't really considering the Texans as a contender, but they ended up, jumping onto the scene with C.J. Stroud, the rookie quarterback, all of his talented young receivers, rookie head coach when DeMeco Ryans first got hired there. There wasn't a ton expected out of them, but they came out of the gate fast, and they looked very good. C.J. Stroud looked fantastic, and they got to the playoffs and lost in the first round, but it was a step in the right direction. And then this past off season, not the one that we're currently in, but the one before last season, they were looked upon very favorably. A lot of people thought that, okay, C.J. Stroud, he should just assume that he's going to take the second-year leap, and the Texans are going to be really good. They're going to be up there contending with the likes of Baltimore and the likes of Kansas City and things like that. But it just didn't work out because their offense just didn't look like it normally has, or at least how it did when C.J. Stroud was a rookie. They were looking very, very dynamic, and they were putting up points. They were, explosive, made a lot of really big plays, a lot of those highlight-type plays. But it just didn't really materialize in the following year, in the sophomore season. They even added Stephon Diggs to, revamp that wide receiver room even more, and it just didn't work out. He got hurt, and then the rest of the receiver room got hurt, and they just kind of struggled through games a lot of the times, but they were still able to win enough games to win their division and get into the playoffs. So it was technically kind of a down year based on expectations, but they still were able to win their division. So if you can, have a down year and still win your division, that's pretty good, I would say, but it's going to be an interesting season for the Texans because this is going to be a year where people are going to be kind of expecting them to get back to where they were when C.J. Stroud was a rookie and when things were going well. Because, it's possible that he could have just had a sophomore slump and just the team overall having a sophomore slump. That's a possibility because more teams would be better prepared for them because there's more tape that teams can watch and, figure out little things that the offense is trying to do, and they can make game plans to stop that. So obviously it was never going to be as easy as it sometimes looked in Stroud's rookie year. But I'm sure, were not thinking that their team was going to look as bad as, or as, kind of discombobulated as they were on offense at times last year. But like I said, they still won 10 games, so it wasn't like they had an atrocious season, where they had another 4-win season or something like that. They were competitive, but they never reached that level that a lot of people expected them to coming into last season. So, in my opinion, the best case scenario is that they get back to that, type of level and have some semblance of what they once were with C.J. Stroud when he was a rookie. they can get back to that point. I mean, I still think they're going to win the division because the division is just not very competitive, and I don't think any kind of additions is going to change much this year, maybe in a couple years as all of those teams start to kind of rebuild. But right now it's the Texans division to lose still at this point. So I think they win the division just by default, but whether or not they're going to be a better team overall, I'm not sure. It's going to depend on a lot of different factors. They're going to have to try and recapture some of that magic that they found a couple of years ago if they want to do that. But right now, best case scenario, CJ gets back to where he used to be, and the Texans offense is more explosive, more, used to what, or more of what we're used to seeing. But worst case scenario is that the regression just continues and the offense looks, even more, out of sorts, especially with the issues with Tank Dell. You don't know when he's going to be available. Will most likely definitely miss some time, if not this entire season, with how bad that knee injury was towards the end of the year last year. So it's gonna be tough for the Texans to try and overcome that. But the worst case scenario is that they are unable to, do that, and they somehow do not win the division next season. That's kind of where I have them at, best and worst case scenario. So if you guys agree, disagree, definitely let me know. But that's it for that segment. When we come back, we've just got a couple more segments to get through here, and then we'll send you guys on your way. But when we come back, we're going to talk some college football now, switching gears a little bit, and we're going to talk BYU and their 2025 preview for this coming season. So stick with us, and we will be right back right after this next break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show, GSMC Football Podcast. Once again, my name is Matthew Quinn. I am your host for these last two segments here. We're going to dive on into some college football, talk about some season previews for a couple of teams here. We've done a number of different teams already to this point. We're just kind of not going in any real particular order. I'm just kind of bouncing around a few different teams that I think might be interesting. And if we get to all of them, before the season starts, then great. But we'll see in that regard. But let's go ahead and talk about some BYU football. BYU Cougars last year, of course, one of the better years that they are normally accustomed to seeing. It was a pretty incredible year. They were picked to finish 13th in the Big 12 last year before the season started, but they ended up tying for first place in the Big 12. They had exciting blowouts throughout the course of the season. They had some nail-biting comebacks last year. A victory in the Alamo Bowl with a crazy scoreline, 42-41 scoreline, I believe it was, but it was a crazy good game. But BYU finished with 13-2 record overall, 7-2 in the Big 12, and proved everybody wrong in the media anyway. Nobody really thought that they were going to make too much noise, and they ended up winning 13 games. So, definitely something to improve upon and to hopefully have some more positivity coming this coming season. Now, they do want to take a step forward with the offense in particular. Last season, the Cougars won 11 games despite having an offense that was even middle of the pack in the Big 12 and nationally. So 31 points per game was 40th nationally. Still sounds like a pretty decent amount of points, but still it was pretty average when you look across the board. And 392.3 yards per game, and that was 59th in the nation. So they're looking to improve on those numbers, of course, and they are going to look towards quarterback Jake Retzlaff. He's going to be the starting quarterback this year, of course. No real debate there, no question. He is the top of that depth chart entering 2025. He prepares for his third season with the program. big question at quarterback resides really in the backup area, is who's going to back him up. There's McKay Hillstead and Treson Bourget, who are the two guys that are going to be competing. Overall, BYU only carried 3 quarterbacks during spring practice. Utah State transfer, that is Hillstead, and Western Michigan transfer is Treson Bourget. They're both going to split the second-team quarterback reps throughout the course of spring ball and have been so far to this point. Hillstead's skill set fits pretty well with what offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick has typically had success with at a quarterback, so he could see some additional snaps if things go well for him. Burkett's arm strength is really his biggest, attractive, thing that you can look for. It's pretty underrated. During observation periods in spring, he's shown his ability to hit those deep passes, so that's something that they're probably going to want to develop, because he's not, of course, right there where you want him to be in terms of a perfect deep passer, because nobody is that until you get to the NFL at least. But there's some talent there that they're going to try and develop in the time that he is there. So at the running back position, LJ Martin is going to be your starter there. They also have Sion Moa and Huanga. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his first name because I know I'll butcher it. But Huanga, the other running back, he's going to be the third string guy. Pretty underrated group, I would say. LJ Martin's going to be the leader of that group. And he's been BYU's leading rusher for the past 2 seasons, so not much of a surprise there that he's going to be the starter once again this coming season. Had a breakout performance that probably put him under the radar of some of the national pundits. When they won their Colorado or their Alamo Bowl win over Colorado, he was offensive MVP, so that kind of turned a little bit of heads in that regard. So he's a talented running back. So he's more and more performances like that will just, make him more and more noticeable by people across the country. In that game, though, he had 88 yards rushing, 33 receiving yards, and found the end zone twice overall. Good news for BYU is that they do have options behind him as well. So if there's any issues in terms of health or anything like that, they do have some decent backups. Like I said, Sion Moa, primed for a pretty prominent role this season. He shined in the upset win over Kansas State last season, but then he also dealt with some injuries that kind of limited his availability as the season wore on. He's a tough runner, though, and he's positioned to be the next in line, the second down or the second running back on the depth chart. For the third string spot, most likely that's going to go to Huanga. He's a versatile ball carrier, showed flashes of his ability in BYU's offense for the second consecutive spring, as he's looked pretty good so far in the spring ball in all reports that we've seen. His ability to catch passes out of the pocket too, or out of the backfield, definitely makes him an asset. They're going to probably want to put him in some packages. You definitely want to have that in your running back room, a running back that can catch the ball, of course. So wide receiver, there's a number of guys, of course, on the roster. It's most likely going to be Chase Roberts. That's going to be the lead man. He's going to be the starter. He is their leading receiver typically. 2 candidates for the most improved player at BYU this season are both wide receivers, Keelan Marion and JoJo Phillips. Both of those guys should be primed for some pretty good years, or pretty decent seasons, I should say. Marion's increased workload on offense typically began near the end of last year. He finished total with 45 touches, 24 receiving, 21 rushing. But don't be surprised to see him kind of blow past those numbers this year. He's probably going to be one of their top weapons in that offense this coming season. Redshirt sophomore JoJo Phillips, he took a pretty big leap last season in his development. So there's an expectation there for him to take yet another big jump when fall football begins here, when the games start counting. BYU was without their leading receiver Chase Roberts during this spring practice session here, this whole spring period. He's kind of recovering from a shoulder injury, so he suffered that in the Alamo Bowl win that they had, but the expectation is that he's going to be ready by the time fall camp starts. So that's good news, at least for BYU. They also brought back Parker Kingston, who has a wealth of experience as he enters his 4th year in the program. So they're pretty set at wide receiver. At tight end, they should be pretty solid there, too. It's pretty straightforward. They have a transfer from Utah, Carson Ryan, who's going to come in and be the immediate starter. He gives BYU the best chance at the tight end position, and he's got the best hope of making that position a real weapon again in the passing game for BYU. So he stepped in immediately in these past spring practices and became the top guy at the position during those practices, making a name for himself on those important scrimmages and things like that here in this offseason. Redshirt freshman Noah Moiaki earned first-team snaps during media observation windows in the spring as well. So that's another guy that you want to look out for, former 3-star prospect out of American Fork High School. And he went through his first spring at BYU this past spring. So BYU's defense should be pretty strong overall as well. A couple of guys, Jack Kelly, Crew Wakely, and Maury Bamba are just a few of the notable players that are returning this year. Talented guys, so there's going to be some experience along that side of the ball. BYU's defense last year, they led the nation in interceptions, and it's looking like they're hopefully going to continue that trend as we get into the 2025 seasons. The Cougars' 2 interceptions that they had in the Kansas State win, it helped in that blowout of Kansas State, and then another interception sealed the game in that win against Baylor last year as well. So definitely an area that they have succeeded in, and an area that it seems like they're going to continue to succeed in. And they were also good at goal line stands as well, forcing opponents to kick field goals instead of scoring touchdowns more often than not. So the defense should be solid. Questions are going to be on offense and the quarterback to see if Retzlaff can be a good enough quarterback to lead this team to yet another impressive season. And who knows? I mean, they were in the college football playoffs, so maybe they can get into possible national championship. Maybe. I mean, probably too much to say that, but you never know. I mean, college football is kind of a crazy sport, but I could see BYU having another solid season. Maybe not that 13-win season they had last year, but in the Big 12, it's a possibility, because it's better than being in the Big 10. If they were in the Big 10, I'd say probably not. But in the Big 12, sure, it's a possibility. But that's who I have for BYU. So when we come back, we're going to do one more segment here, and we're going to talk about Iowa State. Another team that is kind of up and coming as well. So stick around. We will be right back right after this final break, and we're going to talk about our final segment in Iowa State. So stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this. All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment of the show. We are in the home stretch now, so stick with us just for a few more minutes and we'll be all done here. All the people that are still currently watching, I still appreciate it. Those of you who left and were watching before, I guess I'll forgive you for now. But let's go ahead and get into this last segment here. Iowa State is who we're going to be talking about. Obviously, last season, they had a pretty high-octane offense for the most part. So they're looking to possibly have that same thing again this year, returning a lot of key players. Quarterback Rocco Becht, who's second among returning Big 12 quarterbacks in passing yards. They also return all 3 running backs from their 11-win season from a year ago. And an interesting part of their schedule, they actually open the season on the road against Kansas State, and that's going to be in Dublin, Ireland. So that'll be a fun game to watch and to take in. But their schedule also includes a home game against Iowa and a number of new Big 12 teams as well. So offensively, they should be strong, built around the returning quarterback, Rocco Becht, the 3 running backs who are key to their success as well. They should be, pretty solid offensively. Like I said, their early schedule has that interesting match with Kansas State in Dublin, Ireland. They do have some other intriguing matchups as well. Of course, the Iowa game and then some Big 12 teams that they'll have to take out. Key returning starters, of course, 6 on offense and defense, including quarterback Rocco Becht, who we mentioned before. Their recruiting class, they were pretty solid overall. Recruiting class. They got a player like running back Jaden Jackson. He's a top 125 running back. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on. But just going position by position here. At quarterback, of course, we talked about Rocco already. He was the star of the Pop-Tarts Bowl that they played in, and he is the clear-cut number 1 quarterback this coming season. He's a redshirt junior, enters having made 27 consecutive starts under center. He completed 3,505 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he also added some on the ground as well, 318 yards and 8 more touchdowns on the ground. So he's a dual threat quarterback. They should be in good hands with him running the show for this coming season. He's second, like I said before, second among returning Big 12 conference quarterbacks in yards and is in third in touchdown passes. So all a Big 12 pick for honorable mention after being named Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Year back in 2023. So he is looking to have a pretty solid year coming into this season. Should be interesting to watch him play and see if he could be one of those, important quarterbacks that we've talked about that could be coming out in next year's draft. We shall see. But the quarterback room has seen some change since last year other than that, though. But prized recruit J.J. Cole announced his departure through the transfer portal, winding up at App State. And another Iowa prep, Alex Mansky, enrolled early to get a leg up on the playbook as well. So a couple other guys, redshirt freshman Connor Moberly and Major Cantrell, are back along with redshirt sophomore Wyatt Boehm. Of those 3, Moberly was probably the only one to see the field, completing 5 of 10 passes for just 49 yards, and he had 51 yards rushing. So spot duty, mop-up duty. He didn't, spend a lot of time on the field last year. So those guys shouldn't really play a huge role this year, barring any kind of injury or anything like that. So just guys that are going to be on the roster. But as far as running back is concerned, they had a pretty balanced offense last year in college, behind quarterback Rocco Becht, and of course their running backs Carson Hansen and Abu Sama III. Hansen ran for 752 yards and 13 touchdowns last year, and Sama added 587 yards and 2 scores to that room. But what makes Hansen and Sama so special as a duo is that they bring the right skills to the passing game as well. Recording a combined 21 receptions for 130 yards and 2 scores last year, and they averaged about 7 yards per catch as well. So not numbers that are going to blow you away or anything like that, but there is some production there, and they can at least do what's asked of them. So it's definitely something that you want to look for in your running back. So at the wide receiver position, the Cyclones lost their top receivers, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Both of those guys expected to go in the upcoming draft. Over the years, Iowa State has done a pretty solid job under head coach Matt Campbell of finding the right players to hold down those wide receiver positions on the outside and as well as the inside at the slot position. That this year falls to the likes of the transfers Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend. Sowell comes to Ames from East Carolina, while Townsend played for Big 12 foe UCF last season. Both are redshirt juniors, with Sal providing the size that you want at receiver. He's 6'4", and Townsend's got the speed. He's the quick, shifty receiver that can burn your defenses and hit you with those home run balls and all that. So a couple of other guys on the roster: Eli Green, Isaiah Alston, Daniel Jackson. They're all seniors, and a couple of juniors, Carson Brown and Tyler Claiborne, joined that room. So they've got a lot of guys at wide receiver, so they should be able to fill that room with some experience as well. Brown is the most experienced, Carson Brown, that is. He caught 11 passes for 141 yards and a touchdown last year. Also, 2 catches, 52 yards, and that was Alston, and then Escalston caught 2 for 17, and that is, of course, Brett Escalston. So I apologize if I get that last name wrong. I'm not great with names. So, but on the offensive side of the ball, the tight end group was one of the most injury compromised, with 3 guys, Ben Brahmer, Tyler Moore, and Cooper Alexander, all sustained major injuries last year. So they're hoping to return a pretty full strength unit at that position. So they're expecting pretty big things from a pretty experienced unit this fall. So tight end Gabe Burkle was one of those lucky few on the roster that did not get hit too badly with the injury bug. He's been known for his abilities as a run blocker. He got a lot more playing time last year. He contributed on special teams as well, and then, of course, stepped into a bigger role on offense with all the other injuries surrounding that group. With Nolan Higgins, who garnered basically most of the attention on the offense with those 2 receivers, he didn't get a ton of receptions. He had 26 receptions for 296 yards and a touchdown. But, his scoring play that came in that bowl win over Miami, it was the first touchdown of his career, and he hopes to, of course, build towards that going forward as well. So defensively, Iowa State is expected to have several key returners and potential standouts, but they do also face some challenges, as most teams do, coming into a new season. But they have to replace a lot of their veterans on defense. But the strength will most likely be in the linebacker room, while the defensive line and secondary will need to develop, of course. Iowa State's going to need to fill the void left by a few veterans that have left. Departures of safeties Bo Freiler and Malik Verdon, who declared for the NFL draft. They're going to have to replace both of those guys. Defensive line, they need some additional depth on the defensive line. Some potential recruits are being considered at the moment, but the defensive line may need some further development as we go along here. Secondary is going to need to step up and be a lot better than they were a year ago. At the linebacker position, Caleb Bacon is expected to be a strong presence in the middle, and Cooper Ebel could also be a leading tackler on that unit. He has that potential. The defensive line, they've got a few potential defensive line recruits like Isaiah Hudson and Jaden Branston that could make some noise. And in the secondary, Darian Porter, the cornerback, who's also been considered for the 2026 coming NFL draft. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. So a lot of questions for Iowa State, for the Cyclones. I think that the Cyclones could get to another 11-win season. It's possible. The BYU and Iowa State are very similar in that regard. I think both teams have talented players on the roster, but there are still some questions. Iowa State's probably a little bit lower, I would put, than BYU, but they're not that far off, in my opinion. They're pretty close to being the same team in terms of record, but I could see them winning maybe about 10 games this year, maybe 9 wins, something like that. But that is my preview for Iowa State. So I hope you guys enjoyed this show. That's going to be it for the show for tonight. Tomorrow we're going to have another show, of course, same time, same place, maybe something, informative happens in the NFL world that we can talk about. So right now it's just, we're kind of in that slow part of the season where we're just kind of having to go through all of these, little segments here and there where I'm doing power rankings or previews and things like that, just because it's not a very, not a very newsworthy type of, part of the year. The NFL draft is coming in a couple weeks, so that's going to be fun to talk about because we're going to have a whole other list of things that we can do on the show. But as of right now, it's pretty dry out there, so I apologize if you guys have had to, deal with some of the drier segments here. But we're getting into the NFL draft soon, so it should be more and more entertaining as we get closer and closer to the NFL season. But for now, I want to thank you guys once again for joining me. Thanks for sticking out the whole show if you did. GSMC Football Podcast is always, of course, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support does mean a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on all of the social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And I thank you guys once again for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and we will see you tomorrow night on Thursday night, and we're going to talk some more football. All right, guys, have a good night. We'll talk to you later.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to